Howdy. Basically, a video about the same topic as earlier about floods, but there's a twist to the thing. As many of you know, there has been some floods in Slovenia some time ago, 3 weeks, but there has been probably weather still going on there since the floods. It's maybe not just so much talked about since this is already like in a way over. I just want to point out like watch how they are walking over that. They need like keep their hands and they search for the deepest spot and barely stay upright and they walk around there like they would haven't been outside before. But anyway, maybe it's not their job. The Eastern European country will be able to repurpose EU funds to cover its immediate and long-term needs after deadly floods unleashed considerable damage. Yes, this is this kind of political news. I really couldn't find anything. Worst ever natural disaster. The country of 2 million inhabitants was hit by severe floods over the weekend following torrential rain on Friday over roughly two-thirds of the country. According to Slovenia's weather service, a month's worth of rain fell in less than a day, taking the weekly rainfall accumulation in some areas to 200 millimeters. The flooding has been described as the country's worst ever natural disaster. So, they are talking about the floods. And I want to quickly talk about space weather or atmospheric phenomena, which also rain is a part of. So there has been about 3 weeks ago these floods, so we need maybe to assume that there has been also a lightning strike or two. I don't know. Might be. But today, on space weather, giant jellyfish Sprite on August 14th. So a little, I think it's after those floods occurred. Stanislav Ganyansky of Latky, Slovakia, took one of the most detailed pictures ever of a sprite, an exotic form of upward directed lightning. For a fraction of a second, it towered over the landscape like a massive jellyfish. And I have been saying this many times. Energy is going always both ways. And with the rule of thumb, if the energy is going up with the right hand, your fingers crawl counterclockwise. In weather terms, it is a low pressure system. The energy is going up. Yeah, there's downpour, there's rain, but above the rain clouds or thunder clouds, there might be something like this. Energy going upwards. And it could be that during these very heavy rainfalls in Slovakia, which created the floods, there has been many of these sprites as well. But people have been busy down there, so they probably didn't have the time to make pictures. The thunderstorm was about 320 kilometers away, giving me a good view of the atmosphere just above the cloud tops. I captured the sprite using a Sony A7 III digital camera with a 3.2-second exposure. From bushy head to tentacled toe, the sprite stretched about 50 kilometers, 10 times taller than a normal bolt of lightning. Balls of light only a few hundred meters in diameter dot the jellyfish waist and tentacles. Balls of light only a few hundred meters in diameter. Yeah, imagine having a lightning strike like that on Earth's surface, just a few hundred meters in diameter. That would be probably quite a thing. You know? Only a few decades ago, such a photo might be considered outlandish and possibly even fake. Now, however, we know that sprites are real and that they can assume a variety of fantastic shapes. So, I will put a link below. There are some more pictures than just this one. But whoa, check it out. Look at that. Yeah, there's a bunch of sprite videos also on YouTube. I recommend you to check them out. So, now we have basically, in a way, proof that there is energy going both ways. Once again. But I also want to talk still about the floods. Because, like I said in the beginning, it's in a way a similar theme. And I happened to just stumble across something rather interesting because it's rather honest. I haven't read the whole thing. I don't know if I'm gonna make a whole read through, but let's check it out. Slovak Academy of Sciences. There is this kind of a thunderbolting logo what they have. That's really interesting. But anyway, what they have been writing is also very interesting. That's 2021, spring 2021, 2 years ago. 1.5. Anyway, 3,487 people have been reading this. Maybe. I don't know what these visits mean. Historical floods in Slovakia. The opinion prevails currently that such droughts and, at the same time, floods as we have in Slovakia in recent years have never been here before. However, RNDR Pavla Bekarova from the Institute of Hydrology ASAS, who has been dealing with the issue already for 30 years, clearly disagrees. Floods are part of the water cycle in nature and occurred hundreds of millions of years before man evolved. Yes, climate change, people. Did you hear that? For those who are afraid about climate change and CO2 gas and all these kind of things, wake up. Yeah, the climate is changing, but it's not your fault. Whatever you do, it won't have any influence on the climate. It just won't. Because you're just a tiny speck on this earth. And the earth is just a tiny speck in the background. But anyway, let's just read this again. Floods are part of the water cycle in nature and occurred hundreds of millions of years before man evolved. Reasons the scientist at the beginning of the World Water Day. And adds that floods are natural phenomena that belongs to our region. It's not unnatural. Floods and droughts have always occurred in our territory, even at a time when it was not yet been inhabited, she explains. According to her, though, the statistical evaluation of floods must be based on specific measurements of flows on rivers. Observations at the water meter station on the Danube in Bratislava began as early as 1821, and in Gomarno, actually, the measurement of water status began as early as 1805. Measuring the Danube water flow belongs to the oldest one in Europe. Yeah, maybe I made videos about the Danube River, about where it starts. It's a very earthquake-prone region, and then somehow it dissipates under the ground sometimes and pops up in another place and continues its journey. But anyway, and it's not far from the River Rhine, and also not far from the Kaiserstuhl volcano, or many other volcanoes like Hohenkrähen and Hohentwiel, very close to the Rhine Falls, Europe's biggest waterfall, where we have now floods. Yeah, anyway, this is how it ties into the previous video. But now let's continue a little bit, maybe. Explains Peperkova from the historical point of view. According to long-term statistics, the driest year was 1934. The rainiest was 1965. The last years of the most recent history until 2013 were dry, but according to Pekarova, the long-term average of Danube flows in Bratislava can be considered constant. Flows were extremely high during the war years from 1937 to 1941. Do we have a war year because there is much water in the Danube? I don't know, we will see. This year was again preceded by extremely dry years, clarifies the scientist. Yeah, some people say history repeats itself. Maybe the Danube River is yet another indicator for the times. But anyway, the last years of our history have been very dry again. So what can we expect according to the expert? Drought or cyclic rainy years? My motto is, the dry and rainy periods change just like the day and night or winter summer does, she says. The flows of the Danube fluctuate. The average annual flow of the Danube fluctuates from 1,400 cubic meters per second to 3,000 cubic meters per second. The maximum peak flow of the extreme flood in Bratislava exceeds up to 10,000 cubic meters. During the observation period, there were 5 floods on the Danube with a flow over 10,000 cubic meters of water per second, namely in 1897, 1899, 1954, 2002, and 2013. If we lived in 1953 and had 50-year observations of Danube flows, we could say that the maximum flow of the Danube does not exceed 9,000 cubic meters per second. It is clear from this that even 50 years of flow observations are not enough to capture the heights of an extreme century-old flood. When estimating 1,000-year floods, it is therefore necessary to use historical descriptions and compile graphs of when such floods probably occurred, describes P. Parkova. According to the estimate of the Austrian hydrologist Kresser, in 1957 the flow of the Danube in Hainburg and thus also in Bratislava exceeded 13,000 cubic meters in 1501. 13,000. We considered this flood to be the worst in the last 1,000 years on the upper Danube. Austrian hydrologists came to this conclusion on the basis of flood signs from Passau to Vienna. The marks also document that this flood was higher than the catastrophic flood from 2013. The scientist states, in the past, the flood mark from 1501 also existed at the entrance of the Widrika Brana to the old center of Bratislava from Vienna. Floods on Slovak rivers. The largest known flood with catastrophic consequences hit Slovakia in August 1813. On the feast of St. Bartholomew, August 24th. It was caused by regional long-lasting rain which also affected the territory of today's southern Poland, Moravia and northern Hungary. The flood year of 2010 did not reach the dimensions of this flood by far, observes P. Pekarova. Already after the flood in 1775, Maria Theresia ordered to mark the height of the water on all churches in the Vah basin. However, many of these marks have been lost or relocated. One such mark has been preserved in Trenčín. Based on the preserved marks, experts estimated the water flow in 1813 to be 1,000 cubic meters in the town of Lipodivsky Mikuláš. For comparison, the largest floods during the observation period in from 1951 did not reach even 600 cubic meters. Other preserved flood marks are also connected to the flood of 1813. For example, in the lower Vah, the flood mark was located on the manor house in Brunovoce. The flood of 1813 was also recorded on the river Hron, as evidenced by the mark on the walls in Banska Bystrica. Preserved flood marks are very diverse, written in Bernolds's writing, Latin, German, or Hungarian. Their descriptions are preserved in local chronicles and registries in Slovakia and Hungary, says P. Parkova, who is intensively involved in this area. When will be the next flood? It was 2 weeks ago, maybe. History will not tell us. From the studies in our territory, however, we can say that a really big flood is likely to occur in the summer of August. In the summer of August. Okay, I would have expected a year. In the summer of the year, blah, blah, blah. But it's the summer of August. But she was right. It was summer and August when the last floods occurred. And that's 2 years ago. March 2021. August 2023. Flood. Very interesting. Yeah. But anyway, now I've been talking about floods once again. Thanks. Bye.